Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at weapon customization in Deltaforce and how to find the right attachments for best weapon handling and lowest recoil. And we're going to get right in, taking a look at the available stats that you can adjust, and you can find them up here at view details and then down here at details. And here you have an overview of what all of these stats actually mean. So of course you have the damage, which shows for every weapon how the damage falls off on range and also how much damage your weapon does to each body part. Then you have control, which shows you the weapon recoil here in this pattern and also how it changes with your current modification. And what control actually means is, first of all, of course, the vertical and horizontal recoil, but also the single and burst recoil and also the full auto recoil. But what it also means is the firing stability. So this is important as well. You might think that this is under stability, but it's not, it's part of control. Then you have the handling, which is ADS speed, sprint to fire delay, ADS movement speed, and so on, how fast you can walk with your weapon, the sprint speed, the reload time as well. So this is something you need to keep in mind as well. So this is all bundled in handling, which is something I'm not really a fan of, but we're gonna get into this later. Then we have stability, and this is basically how much your weapon sways. It is your flinch when you get hit by an enemy. It is your movement stability, and it's basically how much your weapon moves around when you hold it. And at the end there is the accuracy, and this can be a little bit confusing because I think a lot of people think that the accuracy means that this is your bullet spread when firing in aimed fire, but this is actually only focused on hip fire, and this is also what it says here. The higher the accuracy, the more concentrated shots are when firing from the hip. So this is something you need to consider for each weapon, but for most weapons it doesn't even play a role. And I'm going to show you what all of this specifically means on the example of the AKM, because this is one of my favorite weapons of the game. So how do I approach building a weapon? Well, first of all, what I'm going to do is I go to the firing range with this weapon and I'm going to check what the weapon actually does without any modifications. So how does it behave? Well, hipfire apparently is pretty alright, but that applies for almost all of the weapons in game except for sniper and marksman rifles. But what I instantly recognize is that it has a very strong vertical recoil, so that's what we need to work on. So now we're gonna go back to modification, and what I'm always starting with is the barrel, because here you have a lot of different barrels and some of them open up new slots for attachments, so that is always interesting. And here actually for the AKM specifically are two barrels that are interesting. One is this shorter one that gives you a lot of benefits, but it also closes the foregrip, so that's something I don't really want. Then there are a lot of barrels that might be alright, but they come at a lot of disadvantages, and specifically for this weapon, or actually most of my weapons, I prefer this one, because a lot of gunfights in Deltaforce happen on mid-range, so I always prefer this increase in range and muzzle velocity on my weapons, and it also comes at a good increase in control. Plus, it opens up a lot more barrel attachment slots. So all of the good stuff, I'm gonna install this one. And now I'm gonna go through all these barrel attachment slots. And here you have a lot of attachment slots that come with lasers or flashlights, and some of them only come with the handguards. But what I'm actually doing for assault rifles and also for marksman or sniper rifles is that I'm not equipping a laser. I only equip lasers on SMGs because I use them on close range and fire them more from the hip. Because what a laser gives you is mainly accuracy. And we learned that this is for hip firing, so that's what you need in close range, but you don't need it on mid-range. So unless there is an attachment slot that only gives you flashlights or lasers, I'm not going with a laser. But if I have the handguards, I always go with a ranger handguard because that gives you more control. So I'm gonna pack all of my slots full with this ranger handguard. Now we go into the muzzle and suppressors, and I don't usually use suppressors because they don't wipe you completely from the minimap but just lower the visibility. And what I'm normally using is either this one that gives you more horizontal recoil control, or this one gives you more control overall. However, I prefer to go with the extra horizontal control because horizontal recoil is a lot harder to control than vertical recoil. So vertical recoil is how much your weapon moves upwards when shooting, and horizontal control is how much your weapon moves left or right when shooting. And the AKM has a little bit of movement to the right, so I prefer to go with the horizontal. And you can actually easily control the vertical recoil by simply moving down your mouse when shooting. Going back into the modification, I don't want a bipod on my weapon, of course, so I'm gonna skip this one. And then we have the foregrip. And here I'm also doing the same. You have a lot of foregrips, they give you a lot of benefits, also come with a lot of disadvantages. What I'm normally using is this one here that also gives you extra horizontal control, but it depends a little bit on the weapon. Some don't really have horizontal recoil, so then I'm normally using this one that gives you more vertical recoil control. But for the AKM, I would go with this one. And then specifically for the magazines, I'm usually not using one of those magazines. It might sound crazy to you, but these heavily reduce your aim down sights time, and I don't want that. What I'm using, however, if it's available, is this one, that polymer mag. So this comes with a higher ADS time and faster reload time, but without the disadvantages of the others. So if it's available, I'm gonna use that. And of course, Honey Badger for faster reload time. And then we're gonna go into the rear grip, and here it's basically the same. I'm always looking for something that gives you more control. So for this specific case, it might be either this one or probably more the Scorpio, because it gives you even more control. And then the same on the stock, of course. Here it depends a little bit of the kind of stock you have. Some also gives you stock pads, so it always depends on what advantage the stock pad gives you, but here it's not really worth it. So what I'm usually going with is the Elite Core stock, because it gives you a lot more control. Then of course I'm also equipping an optic, and here I usually, for ARs, I'm usually going with this holographic sight Type 2. It's just something I prefer, but I feel like optics are completely personal preference. Just keep in mind that if you go with a zoom scope, like this one for example, 3x scope, the recoil will appear a lot more than it does with a smaller scope. And now I'm done with the modification. We can go into the firing range and test the weapon, and I think it looks pretty good already. Vertical recoil is reduced quite a lot. If it's not controlled, you can see that it was all over the place before, and now it's a lot better. And it also feels like it's a lot easier to control. Hipfire should still be pretty good, so there has nothing changed in the accuracies. You can see here it's pretty much, or actually it's the same that it was before. And even on range, it's not hard to hit your targets. So what you can do in addition now is go up here to calibration and calibrate some of the attachments. And what you can do here for the barrel, for example, you can do weight limit and length. And what it changes, the weight limit, for example, is your firing stability and ADS movement speed. And there are a few things, for example, like ADS movement speed, where I'm saying I don't really need this. So I go all the way up here and go for firing stability instead, because that's a lot more beneficial for me personally. And then when you go with the length, it gives you either more ADS speed or more muzzle velocity. I kind of want both, so I keep it as is. The calibration is not something that is black and white. You can either keep it, or you go all the way this or that, or you go just a little bit, depends on what you want. But that's why I'm always testing the weapon before I actually go into modification or calibration, because I just calibrate or modificate what I actually need for the weapon. Then for the foregrip, I'm doing the same, just have a look at what it changes. Here in this case, it changes the ADS speed, so I have more ADS speed and less control. Depends on what I want. Do I want more ADS speed? Do I want more control? And here's the ADS movement speed and also the moving stability. And here again, I don't really need the ADS movement speed, but I want more moving stability. So when I'm moving left and right, what you usually do a lot on the battlefield, you know, you have this AD spam, and this is your moving stability. So when you do this spam, your weapon is a lot more stable than it would be without it. Then on the rear grip, it's the same, weight limit and thickness. And this goes for aiming stability while breathing. I'm gonna go into this in a second, and extra control. And here I'm gonna kick out a little bit of aiming stability for a little bit more of control. So this is what I said, it's not just black and white, there's a lot in between and a lot you can do here and fine tune. So what aiming stability while breathing is when you aim down sight and then your weapon moves around, you can see this. And it moves around a little bit more than it did before. But first of all, when you're firing, you don't really recognize this. And secondly, you can counter this simply by holding breath. You can hold breath with any weapon in this game, not only with the sniper rifles, but also with assault rifles and SMGs. So just hold breath and then you basically counter this. And then for the thickness, it's hip fire aim speed, which is something I don't need as well, or moving stability. So I go all the way up to moving stability. And then with the stock, it's again weight limit and placement in this case, which is aiming stability while breathing again, or extra control. And again, I'm gonna go with a little bit of extra control here. And then for the placement, this either gives you ADS speed or firing stability. And I feel like we have a lot of firing stability already. So I go down with this a little bit to get a tiny bit more ADS speed. So just -2 grit in this case. And I'm usually not changing anything on the optic. But what you can do right now is show calibration effect. And enable this, and then it shows you what you have actually done with this. As for the recoil, a little comparison right here at the end. This is the AKM without any modification. And this is the AKM with the modification. Definitely a lot less. We went from up here to there. You will never get it down to 0. You always have to work against the vertical recoil. That's just normal. There will never be absolutely no recoil build. You always have to work against it. If anyone is claiming anything else, any content creators, they're just lying to you. So the only thing you have to do is move your mouse downwards a little bit, and then you can easily control what is left of the vertical recoil. And just one thing at the end, one thing you shouldn't forget, every weapon, even at level 1, has already some starter attachments unlocked. So usually this is some kind of muzzle attachment, and you should not go on the battlefield with naked weapons. So be sure, if you just unlock the weapon, be sure to get in here and equip at least some basic attachments. So this is usually this practical flash hider that I'm equipping. And then there is one of the grips, which is usually the one that gives you control. So this one right here. And then you usually also have a rear grip. And I'm normally taking this one. So whatever gives you more control. And one of the stocks, normally the one that gives you control as usual. And you can also start to calibrate them already if you want. And that was it for today. I hope you found this video somewhat helpful. I will also do another one tomorrow where I'm going over my 5 or 6 favorite weapons that I have in the game across different categories. So be sure to stay tuned for this one. And yeah, if this video helps you, be sure to drop a like and subscribe. And I'm gonna see you in the next one. I'm Catwoman, and you are awesome.